Are you just starting out making music and you don't know which DAW to use? Well, stick around because I'm going to break down the 5 most used DAWs and what they're best for. Let's go! Hiya, Charlie T Music here. Choosing the right digital audio workstation, or DAW, or DAW. I go DAW, but you do you, it's fine. There are so many options. It can be quite overwhelming. So the 5 most used DAWs are Pro Tools, Logic, Ableton, FL Studio, and Cubase. And I'm going to break them down right now as to what they're good at, what they're not so good at, and why you might want to use them. So number 1, Pro Tools. So this is the industry standard for mixing, recording, post-production. Pro Tools was designed originally to kind of take over from tape machines. In studios like this one, for about 70 years, everybody recorded onto a tape machine. And tape machines were the only way you could record music. So Pro Tools and its audio engine was designed to take over from tape machines. That's why Pro Tools is studio standard. It's in every studio in the world. So it's perfect for like multi-tracking and recording. It's great for like advanced audio editing. It's got really advanced routing and busing that all emulates this kind of situation. So it is a kind of hybrid from the analog world to the digital. And that's why a lot of people get on with it, because if, like me, I trained in an analog studio, but we didn't record to tape, we recorded directly to Pro Tools. I was never an engineer that used tape machines, so I've always worked with Pro Tools. But the way Pro Tools routing system works is very similar to how I learned how to route things through a console. So that's some of the things Pro Tools is good at. Some of the things Pro Tools is not so good at. Firstly, it's very expensive, and it's got subscription plans, and there's like 3 different tiers of subscription plan. So if that's right for you, great. If not, maybe another one will suit your workflow better. It's got a much steeper learning curve for beginners. Basically, the secret to Pro Tools is you have to tell it to do everything. A lot of the others are a lot more kind of intuitive, and they kind of get it. You know, you open it up and you're like, yeah, you're going to do something. You're going to create some music. Great. Pro Tools isn't like that. It can be a lot to get used to when you start using it. Also, this is a pretty famous problem for Pro Tools, is its MIDI editing. Its MIDI editing has never been as good as some of the others. So that's something to consider if you're going to use a lot of MIDI-based instruments. Also, I'd say some of the stock software that comes with it is not as good as some of the others. So the next one is Logic Pro. So this is like the songwriter and producer's go-to DAW. It's amazing for like composition and production, songwriting. So one of its many benefits is its powerful stock instruments and plugins. So Logic is literally like a one-stop shop. When you download it, you have everything there ready for you to use to create music. It has incredible stock instruments, great stock plugins. It is really, really good at MIDI editing. It's super intuitive, and it really understands that you want to make music. So it makes creativity quicker. It has libraries of loops and samples all right there in a nice tidy library, and you can just drag and drop. If you change the key, if you change the BPM, they will intuitively change along with it, which is super, super useful. Its setbacks are the fact that, firstly, it's only available on Apple products. So if you've got a PC, anything else, you can't have Logic. If you're going to be recording more live instruments, Logic is not the best. And its input and output system, if you've got multi-inputs and multi-outputs, Logic isn't great at that stuff. It's not designed to be. It's designed to be on a laptop. It's designed to be on a computer. That's fine. But just be aware of that. The interface of it sometimes for beginners can feel a bit cluttered. There is a lot going on, and it can be a little overwhelming. Its audio editing is just not up to it. Now, this is a contentious statement, but I've edited audio for years, and in Logic, I used to get so frustrated when I wanted to do something precise. So the next one is Ableton Live. This is the go-to for electronic music makers, and actually now it's becoming a very big thing in live performance. So it's awesome at like creative sound design. It's amazing at loop-based stuff. It's great for like electronic music makers. It is super intuitive. It is one of the most interesting DAWs that you can get. If you're into like techno, house, EDM, Ableton's a go-to. So the way that it actually organizes its interface is very different from every other DAW. It's not trying to be here. It doesn't care about this stuff. It cares about how you're creating music. So its workflow system is very different to Logic. It's very different to Pro Tools, but it's very easy to get used to. It's really great for live performances, like playback. If you're playing back stems, you can control like lighting and stuff and trigger stuff from one sound to another. And if you're a DJ, this is definitely a go-to DAW for you. It's got really, really powerful automation and modulation tools, so you can get super, super creative in Ableton, and it kind of encourages you to. And it has this really unique sound design program for something called Max for Live. It's definitely worth trying if it sounds like this is going to be the one for you. The only thing that I'd say that's negative about it is what I said about the positive of it not being connected to this kind of stuff is also kind of its negative, because when you're learning Ableton, you're actually learning something that has a completely different style of workflow. So if you learn or use Logic, you're going to be able to use most of the other DAWs because they're all kind of similar. They just do things better than others, or they just have slight differences of where things are, but generally they're all kind of organized in a similar way. Ableton is very different. So some of the stock instruments and some of the stock effects that come with it can feel a little basic compared to something like Logic, but they're still good. They're just not as good as maybe they could be. It is quite expensive, so it's always something to think about. So the fourth one is FL Studio. So this is like the beatmaker's paradise. So if you're like hip hop, trap, lo-fi, this is definitely going to be right up your street. It has a really intuitive piano roll for MIDI composition, which makes creating loops and patterns really, really straightforward. It has a really, really cool step sequencer for like basic beat making. You can create a beat in seconds in FL Studio. It's so, so cool. It has a really, really big range of like cool synths and cool virtual instruments and effects. And a thing I haven't actually mentioned about any of the others is that this one is super lightweight on your computer, so it's very CPU friendly. It's super, super efficient, and it doesn't slow down your computer too much. If you use something like Logic or Pro Tools, if you start to stack up those plugins, every now and again you're going to get a little pop-up saying that your CPU is being overloaded. That happens a lot. FL, it is very, very streamlined. So its only kind of negatives really are its audio recording and editing workflow is not the best. It is designed for like creating stuff using what's in there. It's not kind of designed around recording into it. That's something to consider if you're going to choose FL. The stock plugins vary a little bit in quality. Some are amazing, but some kind of feel like they've been left behind and need a little bit of an update, a little bit of a zhuzh. And the UI design, the kind of interface itself can feel a bit overwhelming for like beginners. Last one, Cubase. And this is like the all-round kind of powerhouse. Cubase is actually basically the reason we have plugins and we have this kind of software. They just didn't succeed in getting into studios. So that's why it's not as widely used as something like Pro Tools or Logic. So Cubase is great for recording. It's also got really advanced MIDI programming capabilities. And it's used a lot in the kind of film scoring world. It's got a really powerful audio engine, which is great if you want to record things at a really high quality. And it's super versatile. It's got really precise plugins for engineers, and it's got really creative plugins for people who are using it more creatively. So it's a really, really good balance of two different DAWs. So its negatives, it's quite expensive compared to Logic or FL, which you might get similar results if you use something like Logic instead. The interface again feels a little bit cluttered sometimes, and it has a lot of options, which sometimes when you just want to open it up and just make something, it can be a little bit of a setback. Sometimes getting around this, and this is how I get around this using something like Pro Tools, is that I have loads of things that I import or loads of templates I create. So sometimes using templates is a really easy way to get around this. It's not as widely used in like mainstream like pop production and stuff like that. That doesn't mean there's anything wrong with it. It just means it's not as popular in that world. So after all that, what we've got to is the fact that each DAW has its strengths and its weaknesses. And ultimately, the best DAW for you is going to be the one that you enjoy using the most, and maybe the one that gets you to making the music you want to make in the most straightforward way. It depends on your needs. The right DAW can definitely elevate your workflow, and the wrong DAW can definitely put you off being creative. Which DAW do I use? So way back, like a million years ago, I started on Ableton before it was cool. And actually before YouTube tutorials were a thing. So I had to read the manual, or I just ignored the manual and I just got into it and just tried to figure stuff out. I'm pretty sure I had no idea what I was doing for most of the time, but it was a lot of fun. So later I did a BTEC in audio technology, and I was told the industry standards were both Pro Tools and Logic Pro. So I learned those. And I've subsequently spent most of my career listening to people argue and producers saying, oh, Logic's the GOAT, Pro Tools is trash. And then there's engineers that are like, no, Logic is trash, Pro Tools is the GOAT. And to be honest, I just really don't care. So now I just use Pro Tools. Yes, just Pro Tools. but I do know how to get around most of them. I just use Pro Tools now because honestly, I got tired of like producing songs in Logic and then exporting everything into Pro Tools when I needed to record vocals or when I needed to mix it. It just was not the best for my workflow. So now I use Pro Tools for everything. And unfortunately, I've also invested quite a lot of money in like virtual instruments and third-party software and third-party plugins. And when you do that, it kind of levels the playing field on DAWs because they're all going to do the same thing because they now all have the same tools in them because they're tools that you've unfortunately paid for. I'm also rapid on Pro Tools. I was an engineer in a studio for several years, and the only thing I really used day to day to do recording sessions was Pro Tools. So I can do things quicker in Pro Tools than I can do in any other DAW. So for me, it works. But that doesn't mean it's going to work for you. But I can tell you this, no one has ever asked when they've heard a song, wow, I wonder what DAW that song was written in. That has never been a question. People will argue that Logic or FL Studio sounds different to Pro Tools. And maybe that's true, particularly in the early days of DAWs. But now, I doubt it. And by the time you've like layered up sounds and you've thrown loads of plugins on and you've processed stuff and then it's mixed and then it's mastered, nobody is going to hear the difference, if there even is one. Honestly, it doesn't really matter which one you use. It's all about what you need and what's going to feel right for your workflow. Each of the DAWs we've talked about have free demos. So don't just take my word for it and go and buy it. Go and download them, and I'll put some links below so you can go and find the demos to each of them and see which one feels right for you. So there you go. That's the 5 most used DAWs. If you found this helpful, definitely share it with fellow potential music makers if they're stuck trying to figure out which DAW to use. Drop a little like, drop a little comment, subscribe for more. Big love. Bye.